Hello and welcome to the Art Podcast with me, Chris Stafford. Well, today I'm joined by a photographer. We've had other photographers on the show before, but I'm curious about this interview with Mackenzie Calle because there's a different twist to it. There's a parallel career you've got going, Mackenzie. Welcome to the Art Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm very excited to be here today.
Well, as I said, it's a parallel career because you've got a project, a passion project. Is it the Gay Space Agency that you founded? Would you consider
Mhm.
that an emerging passion project, which obviously you want to become, something substantial? So I want to start with that because that's like your headlines, isn't it? I mean, in terms of your career as a photographer, this seems to be your signature project.
Yeah, no, I think the project I've been so fortunate it is a passion project through and through, and it's kind of taken on a life of its own. And I'm really kind of fortunate to see where it's gone because it's a history that I am so passionate about and have been fortunate enough now to research for the past 5 years and document and photograph. And it's something that it's grown into this whole world in itself, it feels like. But it's been the greatest privilege and it's been fun, maybe it's not the right word, but fun, rewarding, incredible people who I've also been able to meet through the Gay Space Agency. So yeah, it feels like it goes beyond photography. And it's almost become a whole community of people. So
What's the catalyst for it, Mackenzie?
yeah, it began about 5 years ago in 2021. And I was working as a photography producer at NBC Universal, and I had done that for about 6 years and I loved it. But I knew I wanted to be a photographer. And as I was kind of leaving that role, I found out, I think it was an article online I had randomly seen that said Sally Ride had a female partner. And that was something that really struck me because Sally was someone I had always looked up to as a child. She was the first American female astronaut. And and I'm also part of the queer community. And so I didn't know that she was queer. And it turns out she actually came out in her obituary. So she came out when she passed away in 2012. So in her lifetime, she was never out. And I was now finding out this information in 2021. And I was like, I'm a part of this audience. How did I not know? I'm relatively online. How did I not know that she was queer and had a female partner? And so that really just kind of struck me. And I started to dig deeper into the history of queer astronauts and quickly found out that there was not very much information available online. Certainly not a lot of research had been done on this very niche specific topic. And so I started just digging into every NASA archive that I could find, image archives, document archives, the national archives, books that had been published by astronauts, YouTube videos. I was looking at pretty much anything I could to start trying to put this whole story together and piece together this history. And at that point, I didn't know if there even was a history to find. But that's really where it all began. And then the next kind of catalyst after Sally, or I guess the piece of information that really motivated me also to keep going and keep researching was an article by the writer Francis French, and he had found that early astronauts in the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs were required to take a heterosexuality test, the Rorschach ink blots, which a lot of people might be familiar with. And this was a psychological test not just used for heterosexuality. It was used, to test a variety of personality differences, and obviously now is seen as very subjective because it is. But NASA used this in their early astronaut program to test for a number of things, including heterosexuality. And so after finding that out, I started really delving into astronaut selection and kind of anything that I could to try and find more information. And then I found out that the astronauts were actually required to take a second heterosexuality test called the Edwards Personal Preference Schedule. And that was a personality profile test that ranked about 15 different criteria, one of them being heterosexuality. And some of those questions, it was a lot of A and B statements, and you had to pick which A or B statement just applied to you the most. And the statements weren't related. You just had to pick whichever one kind of felt the most real to you. And then the instructions literally say if they both feel real to you, just pick the one that feels even more real to you. And some of those were, I like A, I would like to accomplish something of great significance, or B, I like to kiss attractive people of the opposite sex. Like that is an actual question. So that was really kind of the start was the research. And then photography came a little bit later.
Is that widely known then, Mackenzie, that test, and that test is carried out?
No, it wasn't. So I spent I don't even know how many hours going through early astronaut selection documents and criteria for candidates, tests for the candidates, medical tests, um, psychological tests, physical, like just every single requirement I could find, applications, that sort of thing, and was trying to look for kind of any indication that homosexuality might have been a disqualifying condition. And so I found the documents and it had here's all of the psychological tests that the astronaut candidates, again, in the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs were required to take. And so I did research kind of into each of one of those and then was able to find a lot of the answers. And even later in the documentation, you can see where it's like heterosexuality rank and then there's like a percentage. But no, it wasn't widely known. And that's kind of really, again, also what struck me and but partially also why this project has taken so long was just because that research wasn't readily available and didn't seem at the time like it had been researched before. I've now been so fortunate through this project to meet two or three academics who are working on PhD theses around this topic. And so kind of all of us are finding even more information. But when I started, it was truly just the two pieces of information were that Sally Ride was queer and then the information from Francis French about the Rorschach ink blots. Um, so
What were you hoping for when you made these early discoveries then and realized this was a project, but a project for what? To what end?
no, and I think that was exactly my question. So again, I quit my job, my full-time job. I was like, I'm gonna take a stab at being a freelance photographer. I'm really interested in this and all of this information. And that's actually when I started as a student at ICP, the International Center of Photography, in their documentary practice and visual journalism program. And in that program, you spend most of your time focused on one long-term project. And one of the main criteria was that it was supposed to be New York based so that we could, more easily photograph it. But I kind of just kept going with this. And that was my fear was I don't know what I'm going to photograph. I'm a photographer. Sally Ride has passed away. Most of the astronauts have passed away. I am a new photographer. I'm not getting access to NASA. How am I going to do any of this? Um, and I'm kind of taking this bet on myself as well, being freelance, and this kind of has to work. But I think I just knew there was something that I couldn't help but research this, to be honest. And so I kind of it was something that in me that just said I have to keep going with this, and so I did. And kind of the way kind of revealed itself. And really fortunately, actually, a huge part of this was that the NASA image archives are in the public domain. So that kind of gave me at least some form of visual to start working with. And so I just started researching and searching terms and seeing what images I could find. And there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of images available for public use. Um, and trying to see if I could find images, look at images of Sally and look for anything else I could find. And I couldn't just Google really like queer astronaut like that. Nothing comes up. You can't search queer. Nothing really comes up. You can search LGBTQ, and I think now there's some images from a pride parade, but less than a page of results in total come up. Um, but I just started to think like, how can I tell the story and how can I use the research and incorporate it kind of in these images? And so I started to manipulate some of them into ways that could indicate parts of the story. And then that's really kind of where the whole project began was with the NASA archival images.
What has it become now, though? Because you're 5 years into this and
Yeah.
you've got your arms around a whole body of research and materials. I'm curious as to what it is now and also what the reaction has been from that community.
Yeah, no, and I think I'm still researching a bit, to be honest. It feels like it's finally starting to come, at least this feels like maybe a chapter of this whole work and project is coming to a close. And so now starting to think about really how can I get this information out into the world and share it in the best way and incorporate a lot of the images as well. And I've been really fortunate that I've been able to go to a lot of schools and talk to them about the history, high school students, middle school students, have exhibitions sharing the work, going on podcasts and being able to talk about it, which is why I'm just, so happy to be here today. And I think education is also, it's just such an interest for me. Both my parents are educators and my grandma as well. So I think to be able to just share the story and to find ways to make this history, I think, more readily available and known more broadly, and especially in a time right now when the queer community, especially in education. I mean, it's under threat on so many levels, but also in education. Even in Florida, for instance, there is a Sally Ride Elementary School, and teachers could be fired for teaching that she had a female partner. So the story is, it's more, it's about the past and the present, and it's more relevant than ever.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
yeah. So.
And in terms of visibility, website, social media, tell
Mhm.
everybody where they can find more information about this.
Yeah, I'm a lot of it. I think the best place to start is on my website, and I have a lot of the images and a kind of page description of the text on my website that's easily available. There are also a number of other sites that have posted about it. If you Google the Gay Space Agency, a few of those will come up. And then I'm hopefully working on starting to work on a book to really compile all of this and writing most of this history to be able to compile it together for everyone and be able to share it that way and have the book be in schools and museums and a lot of other places, especially that are education focused.
Do you see any other dimensions to the media that you've gathered now and the possible outlets in terms of, I don't know, if you have something in mind, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you probably already have.
I think that part of this project is that it's kind of always there's a different evolution of it and it's kind of always changing and it changes even as I find out more information. And I think now there's so many amazing ways of sharing projects and history and work. So I'm open to a lot of things. I'm thinking about a lot of things. There's kind of an extension of this project that is actually going to be shown on a satellite in space, which I'm really excited about. So I'll have, more information and that'll be more available in the next couple of months. But being able to actually show images of queer people in space feels like kind of the next step. And so I think find any ways that I can find to make space and, I mean, through space science more accessible for the queer community, because broadly it's still a difficult place to work and to be so open. It obviously depends on where you are, but uh, broad across the board, it is more challenging.
And so in
Um,
the US, then I'm guessing
Sure,
that
in
this
the
is
US,
obviously,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And do we know why there is such an anti-queer attitude from NASA and the rest of those bodies?
Yeah, and I think so. To go back and also answer your question, like what the reactions have been, is broadly it's people have been so excited. I think especially within the queer community because there has just been a lack of visibility. At the same time, I think there's also been reactions of, like this doesn't matter, we don't need this. Why does everything have to be, preached about? But it does, it absolutely matters. And if like space should be for everyone, and being queer has absolutely no bearing on how well you could be an astronaut and do your job in space. If you're out on a spacewalk and you're going to fix something, being queer does not have a bearing on that. And yet at the same time, because of the active exclusion, they're then saying that it does matter. And so it's trying to just release those barriers and make it a space literally that is for everyone. And this is especially in the United States, but it is across the world for astronauts, especially. Just because NASA has still never selected an openly queer astronaut, nor has any other governmental space agency in the world. So it is still an active issue.
Have you done this single-handedly, or have you had some help with it?
Um, no, this is definitely something that has been, I could not have done this without so many people involved. It feels like I'm kind of the start and kind of I'm doing most of the research and making the images, but at the same time, it's taken so many people and so many people's help to bring this to life. And I've been really fortunate to work with some amazing people. And there's actually a nonprofit called Out Astronaut. And so they're connected to a larger institution called the International Institute for Astronautical Sciences. Um, More easily to say is IIAS. Um, and their founder, Jason Reimuller, is a former NASA engineer, Air Force pilot, and he is queer. And so a really significant part for him was to have and give more access to young queer people. And so through IIAS, they actually do astronaut training for non-NASA. And so he funds kind of a young person to go through some of their astronaut training. And he was so kind and has invited me, and I've been able to go and photograph a lot of the work that they've done. And been able, and then through them to meet other people who've just been incredible collaborators on the project. And especially when we started to stage the fictional side of the Gay Space Agency. So I guess I also haven't mentioned this is kind of there's two parts to this project. The first is working with the actual real history and archives. And then the second part is inspired by one of Sally Ride's quotes was, "You can't be what you can't see." And I was just so interested in all of the gaps I was seeing in the archives. It wasn't just what's there, but it's what's missing, and really wanting to like visualize queer people in space. So that's when I started to imagine a fictional space agency, kind of what I wish could exist in the world. And this was definitely the biggest collaboration and worked. So through Out Astronaut, I met Dr. Brandy Nunes and Isaac Charles Anderson, and they both became the kind of fictional first astronauts for the Gay Space Agency on the first crew. And Magnum Foundation also has been a huge supporter of this project. And so we were able to have them come to New York and actually filmed a short film as if they were the first crew for this Gay Space Agency. And that was directed by Gareth Smith, who's now a dear, dear friend and one of the most amazing people. And so the fictional Gay Space Agency side is the biggest collaboration by far and couldn't have been possible without any of them.
Are you a budding astronaut, Mackenzie? Are you a wannabe an astronaut then?
I think it's hard to say no. I think my curiosity is so piqued. But I'd also want it to be for the right reasons. I think if someone said, you can launch and you can go and walk on the moon, I mean, that is just something that you don't turn down. And just feels so surreal that it's not even possible. Um, but otherwise, I think I'll leave space for the scientists and pilots.
Well, you've certainly given them a lot of support here with this project. So the best of luck with that. And it'll be interesting to see how it is perceived in generations to come, when the political climate changes, when we can revisit this with a more open mind, countrywide, shall we say, and in terms of access to education.
Mhm.
So you really will have made your mark. I think you've created a foundation for it, a substantial foundation, obviously, for it.
No, I hope so. I mean, if it can even help one person get into the science field or just believe that they can do it, that's enough for me. But I hope that I think we're in such a pivotal point in the space era and space program. It almost feels kind of like the start of a second space age going back to the moon, and the with the goal to establish like a permanent presence on the moon. If not, then using the moon as a literal launching pad to Mars. Um, More and more people are going to be needed in space, and it's going to take all of us. So hopefully, this can just play like the tiniest little role in that. Um, I don't
Do
know,
you
or
get
inspire.
do you get goosebumps when you watch the launch of these
Oh
spaceships?
yeah.
You do.
I went to my first one. So this when I was struggling in when I started the project and I was like, I have absolutely no idea what I'm gonna photograph for this. I ended up actually flying down to Florida, just basically almost overnight to photograph a launch because I was like, at least I'll have some images and I'll see what this is like. And I photographed the museum and was kind of trying all these different things. And um I it was a night launch. It was a SpaceX crew going up to the International Space Station, and um, I was exhausted, and I was in school at this point and questioning, I think, every life choice. And the rocket took off, and it just lit up the sky. Like it was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. There was like a low layer of clouds. It was a really cloudy night. And at first I was like, oh no, this is, going to be hard to see, or now, was this whole thing a waste? But literally it was just like a ball, like a sun rising so fast. And then when the rocket hit the cloud layer, the light just spread across the sky. Like it seemed like in an instant day or like night turned to day. And I just started crying. It
Oh,
just seemed like something that wasn't possible, and like the heavens were opening to be so, I don't know. That's the closest word I honestly have for it. But I think even if you're not interested in space, to see a rocket launch is pretty incredible.
yeah, it really is spectacular. There's no doubt about it. Now, it's interesting because we talk about you obviously being a photographer. That's your profession. It's your
Hmm.
day job. You have an interesting arts background too, because you went to art school,
Hmm.
NYU Tisch School, and then
Hmm.
you went to the International Center of Photography, as you mentioned. But you
Hmm.
also come from, as you mentioned, your parents are both in special education, but they exposed you to a lot of arts when you were younger. Tell us a bit about growing up in Orange, California, and what your early memories were really of exposure to that world.
Yeah, my both of my parents work in special education and with students with severe autism, especially. Um, and I think both of them weren't directly in the arts, but loved it. And obviously, have a passion for education. Like I said, my grandma was a teacher as well. And I think that through them, my mom loved history and loves history, loves museums. And so she really showed us a lot. And anytime that we could, anytime we traveled or anytime we visited family, we would go and see museums. Especially I have an aunt and uncle who live in just outside of Washington, D.C. and Virginia. And so anytime we went there, we was kind of taking any chance we could to go and see every one of the museums in D.C. Um, and yeah, I think just really learned a love of art from both of them. And my dad loves photography as well. And if I think I have a lot of pictures even on my iPhone, like he puts me to shame, and absolutely loves it. And I think that they just, yeah, I think growing up with seeing things and learning about it, and um my senior year of high school, we were also able to take my mom took me, my brother, my sister to Paris, which was insane. I'd never, done anything like that. And that was just the most insane trip, museum wise, obviously, and going to the Louvre, going to the Musée d'Orsay, even just seeing the architecture. It felt like it just opened up a whole world for me. And that same year in high school, I took an art history, AP art history class. And I had the most amazing teacher, Miss Kuros. And I think through that class, and then also then being in Europe and getting to literally see some of the art I had just been learning about or had been tested on, it just made it feel so much more real and exciting. And yeah, I loved the history and I loved the art itself, but I also love kind of the culture behind it and the culture of the artists. And um, Yeah, being exposed to whole new worlds.
Did your dad teach you photography? Was he the reason you are a photographer now, do you think?
You know, no, honestly, no. Sorry, Dad. Um, sorry. But I think he's probably the reason he and my mom honestly are both the reason that I do love space so much. Which my dad, so we would go up to the Sierra Nevada mountains in California every summer. And be out under the stars at a place called Mono Lake. And it's just the most surreal place in the world. And they have these kind of tufa formations that grew underwater, but because the water levels, LA County was using the water, and so it's kind of drained now, and they revealed all these tufas. So it just feels like the most surreal place you can be. Um, and I had just never seen the Milky Way like that. And so going there every year, that was one of my favorite nights of the year. And my dad loved it. And even to this day, like if we try to go still up there every year, and he will go out almost every single night and be at Mono Lake taking pictures. So from them, and but it was originally like my mom used to go up there when she was a kid with her family. And so that's the reason that we always went up to the Sierras. And then my dad also just fell in love with it. But my mom actually does not enjoy space very much at all. So my parents could not be more different about their views on space. But it makes it kind of a fun dialogue. And I think I'm just always trying to be like, okay, mom, do you like this picture? Do you like this? And seeing how much I can get through to her is a kind of fun challenge.
How does she react now to what you're doing, both with your photography and with the agency work?
Yeah. Oh, she's the biggest. So they both are honestly my biggest supporters. Um, I wouldn't be here without either of them. And even being on the phone with them and being like, hi, mom and dad, I'm quitting my job to be a freelance photographer. Like neither of them blinked an eye and they were like, sweetie, like go for it. And they've just kind of always, told me I can do whatever I want. Like if I set, they're like, since you were little, like if you set your mind to something, you tend to do it. Um, so they both, even for the project, my dad posts anything that happens on Facebook, so it's all there. He's a Facebook dad. And yeah, no, my mom also has just really been amazing with it. So
And you're the oldest of three. You mentioned your sister Emma and brother Eric.
Eric.
I'm wondering
Mhm.
if you were the typical older sister then. Were you the one leading the way and was expected the most of? Often the way with older siblings.
I think a little bit. I definitely got my parents' art taste. In our family, it tends to be my mom, my dad, and if I like something, then I pretty much know my mom and dad are gonna like it also. And if we all like it, that almost obviously means my brother and sister will not like it. So it's kind of we have a battle in our family between art taste and my brother and sister, and I think would say that most of the things we like are very weird, um, putting it nicely. So we have eclectic taste, I will say. But no, I think like I'll find a piece of art on the street or at a flea market, and if I need support, I will text my parents, and if I don't, then I'll text my brother and sister. Um, yeah, no, I think I was a bit the older sister for
Right.
sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So what's the art that does appeal to you then? Now, are you a collector? It sounds like
Oh
it.
God, no.
Yeah. Oh,
I
you're not
mean,
a collector.
I mean, I do not have the funds to be a collector by any means. But I think in a dream alternate reality that would be amazing because I love looking at art, learning about art, meeting artists and what they're doing and what they're passionate about. So maybe in a dream world or maybe I don't know in 50 years and my retirement savings will have kicked in and I can buy a piece of art. But until then, I will just be an admirer, and find the things I can. Or I guess the benefit also of having so many friends who are artists is we can also trade work.
Right.
Um, so
Yeah. Well, it
yeah.
sounds like you're picking pieces up in flea markets and
Oh yeah.
places like that. So you are a collector.
I guess I will say, you know what? I am a collector, and I think not the traditional definition of that world, where I guess actually in the true definition of it, but not in the way that it has come to be assumed. But no, I love flea markets, antique stores, yeah, I guess just kind of searching for pieces, and it's a lot of fun.
Do you do any other art yourself apart from photography?
I do mostly photography. I think that I'm really starting though to get an itch to make things with my hands more. I think photography, and I do mostly digital photography also.
Mhm.
And I'm really starting to want to just create things a bit more physically, even ways of showing photography in more physical ways, or having prints, or having making different frames that I can use, or I think just really thinking about physical space and physical objects more and how I can incorporate it with photography, but also things that I want to make. And I think that was part of the reason I also really loved staging kind of the fictional gay space agency, was getting to bring that to life required me to make a lot of things. So I was designing patches and ordering patches and flight suits, and how can I create a space suit on a budget, and what are kind of all of these elements that I can kind of make and create to really, yeah, bring this whole world to life. And that was really fun and exciting for me to get to do. But inspired by a lot of like the NASA actual objects and things I have seen in their archives.
Do you paint or sketch then, Mackenzie? I mean, are
Oh
you
God, no.
a doodler? You're not a doodling then when you're no.
No, I wish. I'm not that talented. No. Um, I photography, and I think I've made some kind of sculptural objects and things along those lines, but painting and drawing is not something that I've been able to do very well yet, or move
In
much
your
past stick
family.
figures.
It is in your family, isn't it? Your great grandfather
Um,
was a
mhm.
was a painter.
Yeah, actually. So my great grandfather was a painter, and he's actually the person who started going up to the Sierras. And he built like a tiny little log cabin up there. And so he would go up with my grandma and on a Model T, and they'd carry rocks back and forth to help build the cabin. And that was his kind of serene, quiet place. And he would paint the mountains and the sea as well when he was home in Southern California. But that was kind of he's the painter in the family, and so we're really still fortunate to have actually a lot of his paintings and art. Um, but no, I did not inherit any of that ability.
When you were growing up, were you an outdoor and indoor child?
I want to say somewhere in between.
Yeah.
I think I was really adventurous and curious, but also really cautious. So I wasn't taking insane and it was insane risks or going, I wasn't the person, I wasn't the kid who was like, I want to go skydive or do anything like that. But I love sports. I love learning, experimenting, and going to new places and seeing new things.
Yeah,
So,
I see a sports girl in you. What were you playing?
oh yeah. Basketball and volleyball. Yeah, I was tall, so my parents were like put me in the tall girl sports.
How tall are
Um,
you?
5'11". So not super tall now. And on some of the teams I was on, I was the shortest person. So I don't, but compared to, I guess I'm above average compared to the general public. Um, but I love sports. So
What do you play now?
still a bit of both. I'm more of a basketball person now. And I watch a lot of basketball as well. I think I really love the community side of sports and what they can do to bring people together. And I love sports stories and movies and sports documentary series. Yeah, I'm kind of interested in just all of those.
Well, as a young teenager, I can see that, the influences you've had of art from your parents and the encouragement, the support that you could do anything. I'm wondering how it funneled into the career when you were in high school, choosing the schools you were going to and your career path. How did that happen?
Yeah, I was in high school, I mostly would have described myself as like a student and a volleyball player. Like I studied so hard and did everything I was supposed to do, and I played volleyball uh, almost every day. It was a very, very, very intense team, and I just really got burned out and had some terrible coaches as well. And so I quit playing volleyball my junior year of high school, and all of a sudden I had time again. And through that time, I discovered TV. And that kind of sounds weird, but I just discovered kind of how much I loved storytelling through TV and characters and long-term stories and just being able to, yeah, I've said this a couple times, I think already, but like create worlds, invite people into worlds, see characters' arcs, and that just felt like something I never had really seen or been drawn to before. So I started watching so much television, and through that, I ended up getting into NYU, and I wanted to make TV shows was my goal. So I majored in cinema studies and studied also producing and art history because I loved art history and but yeah, I wanted to make TV shows and through there, I was able to intern at NBC in their photo department, and that turned into a job after college. And so that to me almost felt like the perfect combination of both. Started to love photography. I bought my first camera in college. So I think I was a sophomore or junior when I got my first camera and started using it ever. Because I wanted to take pictures of the city and travels and that sort of thing. And um, just fell in love with it. And so getting to work in NBC photo was kind of, yeah, combo of TV and photography. And then I guess slowly through that job, I just really realized that I wanted to be a photographer. So,
And but what type of photographer? I mean, I know as a story you wanted to be a storyteller,
yeah,
but what type of photography was appealing to you then at that stage?
honestly, I didn't know. Um, I think I loved so many different types of photography, and I really did just love stories.
Mm.
And I think because I just didn't have the time necessarily to figure that out yet, like I was taking pictures of, again, travels and friends and things around me, but I had never really sat down and been like, what am I interested in? I was just, as incredible as my job was, it was also really demanding, and I, didn't have a lot of free time. And so I think it really took me leaving to kind of discover what kind of photography I wanted to do. And that was part of like why I wanted to go to ICP as well, was just to have some structure around, what, I want to do this, but I really don't know how I want to do this and exactly what way. Um, I mean, I've loved fashion photography. I've loved documentary work. I've loved, kind of everything in between, fine art photography, landscapes. Like there was bits of everything that I was really drawn to. And I think I knew that I wasn't necessarily going to become a fashion photographer. Um, but I was just interested in so many things that I kind of wanted to give myself the time and space in school to figure out what who am I as a photographer and what am I interested in and what do I want to do. And um, yeah, that was kind of
But
the best part of
sports,
school for me.
did sports photography ever appeal to you?
You know what, it does a lot, and I'm starting to do more sports photography now, actually. I think it took a long time for me to kind of come back to sports in a way. Like after quitting volleyball, I ended up playing on the NYU team, volleyball team for 2 years. And I think after that, I just really needed a break from it for a while. So it's only now in the last couple of years that I've kind of come back to watching sports and being so into it again. And so naturally, yeah, sports photography has started to come into that. And I think it's so much fun. And especially right now with so many women's sports on the rise, it's fun to get to see and to photograph. So,
When did that move from the West Coast to the East Coast happen for you? Was it just in college and you stayed here, or
mhm.
what happened in between?
Yeah, exactly. So it was moving to New York to go to NYU when I was 18, and then I stayed ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I love New York. So,
you like the
yeah.
vibrancy, the energy,
Yeah.
and the
I love it.
opportunities as a photographer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just it to me is the greatest place, and I love visiting Southern California. But I don't think I could ever live there again. So,
How do your parents feel about that? I presume that they're still out west. They see
they
you.
are. They are. No, and we try to visit as much as possible, and but obviously being fully across the country is difficult, and um, I think they would prefer that I would be a lot closer. But also they know how much I love the city and have my life here. Um, Yeah. But my brother and sister live in Seattle, so none of us are home, which I think is difficult, but they're at least on the West Coast, so it's easier to see them more frequently.
Now, you mentioned obviously the work that you're doing with the Gay Space Agency is because you are yourself queer and you're openly queer. And I'm curious about that journey for you because we all know that everybody's story is very different, Mackenzie. Do you
Mm-hmm.
want to touch on that and how it obviously contributed to the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I think and I was out before working on this project, and that was, where a lot of my interest in it came from. I think because I didn't know I was queer for most of my childhood and even into college. And for me, starting to think about, why isn't it something that it took a while to come to this point. And who were, people ask like, who were your heroes in, when I was a kid? And I'm like, I didn't have, posters of like boy bands or anything on my wall. Like it felt like there was always kind of something for me that was a little bit different. And I think being queer has been the greatest gift in my life. And it's had obviously such an impact on my work. And it's where, the Gay Space Agency came from. And I think doing that work also just made me so much more appreciative of the queer community and learn so much more about queer history and where we've come and how far we've come and the work and the fight that it's taken to get to this point, but also knowing that that work and fight is far, far, far from being over. Um, but just getting to learn about that. And I think there was a part of me that almost had to separate myself from some of the history because it was so hard to read. And to think about then if I was in that era, what would it have been like for me? And realizing that so much of my life would be entirely different and I wouldn't be able to love who I love and I wouldn't be able to be open, or I would have to choose between my career and my personal life, or there's just so many sacrifices you'd have to make and you couldn't be able to be who you are and have the career you want. And physical safety was also a huge issue for so many people. And I think there's definitely parts of me doing all of this research. It's made me like it is so much more appreciative, but also just it's hard to think about sometimes. Um, and kind of, yeah, I don't know, putting yourself in that position because I would have been. But fortunately, I was born in this era. But then I think there's also a level of guilt in a way and wanting to kind of give back to the community and like how can I kind of help things moving forward and make
So
things
what
better
is
for
it?
other people.
Right.
But
Well, clearly, obviously, it influences and affects everything in your life.
mm,
So tell me what a day in the life of Mackenzie Calle looks like now.
I think the fun of it, but also maybe the challenge is that every day looks different. Um, there's periods where I'm traveling a lot for work. There's periods where I'm in New York a lot, which are also incredible, and being able to have some more stability. There's days where I'm on a shoot for 10 hours. There's days where I'm editing photos for 10 hours. There's days where I am sending emails for 10 hours, and some days where it's a mix of all of those things. I think those are maybe my favorite days when it's like it could be okay, you have a shoot and then you can edit pictures and send emails. And I think I like kind of the bouncing between all of those different things. And I think for most of my career between NBC even and being a photographer, I've just traveled so much. And for the last couple of months, I've just been in New York a lot more and I've really loved that, honestly, and been able to just kind of take advantage and feel like getting kind of life in order and finding a rhythm and finding, just being able to have some stability in the day to day, but still kind of getting to do different things every day. And also with shoots and people, it's like you never know who you're going to meet and what you're going to expect. And I think it's fun just because I get to learn every day.
Have there been any hurdles that you've had to overcome in your career then to make yourself known as a photographer, as a queer photographer, and establish yourself in what is a very competitive world in New York. Obviously, it's super competitive, but you've obviously taken on that challenge, with all the energy that you have, and then not been deterred by it, and being a woman as well. But I'm wondering if there were any hurdles along the way that you had to jump.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of hurdles. And one of the things that's helped me the most was coming out of ICP. I had so many friends who are also now trying to be photographers in New York. And so we were all kind of in it together. And I think that was really helpful to have kind of a group that felt like we're all in this together. Um, but it's hard. I mean, there's aspects, so many that are still hard about freelance, the instability and clients and needing, always more work or work changes last minute or um I think being so that but that's also that applies for most people who are freelance, whether photography or otherwise, or New York or otherwise. But I think being queer, and it was definitely a choice also to be so open. And even, the first thing you see if you Google my name or look on my website is the Gay Space Agency. And so I am very openly queer online and for everyone. And there's been projects I've worked on or have even started to work on that uh, were not related to the queer community whatsoever. But and then meeting people though who didn't want to speak to me because I was queer. And so that's been a hurdle, is finding ways of kind of still doing some of the projects that are stories that are absolutely worth telling, but maybe with people who are more hesitant to speak or work with me because of who I am. And those are then the people who I also want to speak and talk to and work with even more, and just start to have those conversations. Um, yeah. So,
When you took that leap into the freelance world, Mackenzie, which we all know can be a little bit scary,
mm,
how did you establish your value, and what were the challenges there for you establishing your value as a photographer?
you mean like what I
Your,
bring to?
no, what your monetary value was in terms of
Mm.
your street cred and your establishing your name as a photographer. There's a transition there, right, to being able to demand the price you think you're worth.
Yeah. And then I think that's still a challenge for me and for so many photographers. And then also asking for what you're worth when there's so many places that aren't willing to pay or don't have the budget to pay for what they want, or they don't necessarily understand, every aspect that goes into photography, and how much time it takes. It's not just even for an hour long shoot or a 2 hour long shoot, they don't understand the time it takes to, bring gear, get there and back, and to process the photos, edit the photos, download the photos, send the photos if they want the photos retouched or not, or even, the email back and forth and communication, and how much the gear costs and my expertise costs to be able to use the gear and to have my eye. So I think there's so many aspects to it that people don't necessarily understand the time even just involved. And so it can be really tricky to do that. And I think for me, it was a slow learning curve. Coming from the NBC world where I was hiring photographers very regularly. And so I think that helped me a little bit in some of those conversations and understand kind of starting points and how to navigate it. Um, and also kind of understand in some ways that photography it's hard because it is personal and it is your art, but also at the same time, sometimes it's also people are looking for something else, and it's nothing against you. It's just they're looking for a totally different style, or they want something else for some other reason that is so out of your control, and in a lot of ways where it's not personal. So it's also being able to kind of separate yourself from that a little bit. And I've applied to so many grants and that sort of thing, and I get so many rejections, and have been fortunate to also get a few acceptances. But it's kind of also just learning to keep going. And so even in, talking about valuing yourself in price or applying for things that you think you should get or that you're perfect for, it's kind of just having that resilience to kind of keep going and knowing that, something, this wasn't the right thing, but maybe, something else will come along. Um, yeah.
Are you where you want to be, or is there somewhere else you want to go to? Is there another stage you want to reach?
Mm, it's a really good question. I think I'm I need to learn to do a better job of being where I am at and appreciating it as opposed to always looking at what's next. I think there's so many things that just I'm so excited about that it's hard to sit still and to minimize in a way. So I, but at the same time, like I can't even explain or express like how grateful I am to be where I am at and to be able to be a photographer who can share their work with people, especially, a project like the Gay Space Agency that means so much to me and for it to get to share that with people and for it to mean so much to them also, I could never have imagined. Um, so I'm incredibly grateful for where I'm at, and it feels kind of surreal sometimes. But I think that that also only motivates me to want to do that to even greater extent and with more projects also.
How do you switch off? How does Mackenzie Calle relax?
Um, I still watch a lot of TV.
Storytelling.
TV and sports, yeah, a bit, and just being outside. I love playing games, also love cards. We'll have game nights with my friends. So, yeah, I think just trying to enjoy being in New York and being in the city and just kind of doing some things for fun, going upstate and going on hikes. And I think it's important to like have that time to turn off because again, being freelance, it's hard to turn off when you're your own boss. But making that time to do that because sometimes if I'm so overloaded, then I don't have time to think about it, or I'm so paralyzed by the amount of work that it's not beneficial to anyone. And so it's really making sure I can have some of that time to like turn off and find a work-life balance for myself as much as possible. And sometimes that's hard and sometimes it doesn't happen. But doing it as much as I can.
Are you a reader or a writer?
I wish I was both. And I'm definitely not a writer. My writing has gotten better because of how many grant applications I've had to write. Um, I'm becoming a bit more of a reader. If I start a book that I love, I will finish it almost instantly. And there was a book I got a month or two ago, and I bought it in the morning and finished it at 2 or 3 a.m. that night. Um, but I
Yeah.
think sometimes it's hard for me to pick up a book and read
Fast reader
consistently.
then.
I mean, it wasn't the longest book in the world, but it was also just one that was so up my alley. It was hard to put down. So.
Any book or movie recommendations then since you watch so much TV?
I'm rewatching The Americans right now, which is a TV show with Matthew Rhys and Kerry Russell, which is incredible. And they both play undercover KGB spies in the 1970s in Washington, D.C. And I think that's one of the best shows. Um,
I didn't know they did that. Husband and wife
mhm.
combo.
hmm Yeah, so they're put undercover as a married couple. They even have kids. So they are basically travel agents to anyone looking in. But they are actually KGB spies.
Okay.
And I think that's just one of the best shows, and it gets better every season as well. And then in terms of sci-fi shows, I really always love The Expanse. It was a show that started on Sci-Fi and then ended up going to Amazon Prime, I believe, but it felt like one of the more realistic almost views of what our future in space could look like over the next 4 to 500 years, but with really incredible characters and visuals, and it's a lot of fun. Um, and books, even the book I was just talking about was Atmosphere, by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So it was released sometime in the last year, but it feels almost like a fictional version of Sally Ride and if she had come out and fallen in love with a fellow astronaut. So it
Okay.
was definitely a book that was could not have been more tailored for me. Um, yeah, those are some.
And the you've sent me a list of artists whose work you admire, and I think the first one was Lee Miller, of course,
hmm
the film that Ellen Caress directed. You know, Ellen's been on the show and she talked about directing that with Kate Winslet. And I can imagine the work that Lee Miller did would be enormous inspiration for you.
Yeah, in a massive way. It's hard to say a favorite photographer, but I think she would be my favorite photographer, and her life and work both are inspirations to me in the way that she constantly transformed herself in her work and it never felt like she was limited and kind of always followed her passions, starting off as a Vogue model and then in New York and then moving to Paris and became a muse with Man Ray and worked with Man Ray and helped develop new photographic techniques even with him. I don't know if he would give her that credit, but she did. Then falling in love with an Egyptian businessman, and that's where her kind of surrealist work in photography really began, and then becoming a World War II news correspondent for Vogue, but being one of the only female photojournalists doing that work. And then yeah, so she's definitely a huge inspiration for me.
So, well, that leads me nicely to our dinner party, your dinner party, I should say,
Yes,
because I'm not going to be there, but I'm guessing that Lee is on that list, is she not?
she is on that list. She is on
All
the
right.
list.
Who?
I think we could also all guess Sally Ride would
Of
be
course.
on
Yeah.
that list.
Yeah.
Um, David Attenborough as
Oh,
well.
yes. Super interesting.
Um,
You know, he just
just
turned 100.
yeah, which is crazy.
Is crazy.
Um,
Sharp as a
and
tack. And I mean, his
mhm,
contribution
yep.
to civilization, period. I don't think that's
Yep.
grandizing it at all.
No, I think he has had one of the greatest impacts on our awareness of the environment, climate, our entire world, almost more than anyone else could have.
Mm,
And to have been doing it so passionately and so intensely for so long. I mean, even still, he is
yeah.
filming and recording. It's incredible work. And he also has one of the best voices to listen to. But I'm also National Geographic Explorer feels my is my fancy title. Um, and being in that kind of whole community with National Geographic and being exposed to so much of the work that they do um and with him, and it's just been kind of one of the most amazing things to get to see. And I've never met him, and but I would love to sit down at a dinner table with him.
I bet you would. Yes. Okay.
Mhm.
Who else is going to join you?
Um the you know what, my great grandpa would be on there, the painter, I
Painter. Yeah.
think. Yep. Just because we never had a chance to meet. He passed away long before I was born. But as
His name.
being the most Phil Lissman, yeah. And he was an optometrist for his career, but always just loved painting. And I think as the most obvious kind of other artist in the family, I would love to get to talk to him. And the mountains are also one of my favorite places, quite literally my favorite place on earth. And it was for him too. So I would love to get to talk to him about it. Um, Another one would be the artist Felix Gonzalez Torres, who did incredible, I guess, sculptural work addressing the AIDS crisis and love and loss, and working through having a partner who has AIDS and then himself having AIDS, and his work is just some that affects me more than anything I've ever seen. So I would love to talk to him about his kind of work and thought process, what that experience is like personally, and having that, I think, just so honestly being expressed through his work, and learning more about kind of the AIDS era. And then I'm a very curious person and I hate not having answers to things. So I'm not necessarily like a conspiracy theorist, but but like all of those kind of like big unanswered questions, I'm always really curious about, like, who was this person or who was that we never ever found out. And the one that I've been on the most recently is DB Cooper, who stole like $200,000 and then jumped out of a plane in the 1970s, I believe. And he was never found, and they don't know who he is. And so I'm very curious whoever actually DB Cooper is, and would love
Yep.
to know.
You have to track him down, and it's a
Yeah,
he. Is a he? Is it or
it
I'm
is.
assuming?
It's a
Okay.
man, but they don't know anything more beyond. I mean, who knows? He could have been in such a disguise that it could have been a woman. But from everything that they've been able to deduce, it was a man. But they don't have much more information beyond that. Um,
Okay.
so I would be fascinated to know who he actually was
Okay.
and how he did this and why.
Yeah, and how he pulled it off. Never
Hmm.
caught.
Yeah. So that was my oddball, but I've got to know.
One more.
Wait,
Was that the six?
I think that was six. I mean,
Sally,
I guess
Lee,
Sally Lee, David,
David.
Felix.
Felix.
My great
Oh, you.
grandfather,
So
DB
okay.
Cooper.
Yep. So
But
we're number six.
I I guess if I'm going to expand, it's very similar to Sally, but I think Amelia Earhart would be another
Oh
person, just
yes.
like women in flight, and kind of breaking those boundaries.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, of course. That well, what an interesting conversation that's going to be. Who are you going to sit next to? Who's going to be either side of you?
got to start with Sally Ride and Lee Miller. I think they're just two people who've had the greatest influence. It's like kind of Sally with almost the content of work and passion for science and women and in space and science, and then Lee with her kind of art. Um, yeah, those are the two.
What's this dinner going to look like? Is it a kitchen supper? Is it a formal dinner? Are you catered? Do you like
Ooh,
cooking? Are you going to cook?
maybe I'll cook.
Okay.
Be outside at dusk. We're gonna have a beautiful sunset, I'll say. And I'll cook. I don't
Okay.
know what exactly. Maybe I love just kind of like bites and appetizers if things are kind of huge, like shared family style food.
Right.
Um,
So
maybe
very easy to,
Mediterranean.
yeah,
Yeah.
very easy to serve,
Um, yeah, I'm have
relaxing.
a small part but part Syrian heritage, so some food in that vein. Maybe I'll make grape leaves, hummus and meat and yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah, this sounds like a very, friendly atmosphere, very casual atmosphere. Are we going to have some music? Well, I know you like Florence and the Machine. Is she going to be playing in the background?
That could be a dream. Yeah, that would be a
Okay.
dream. Yeah.
Do you play
Um,
anything? Could you play a piano or guitar for them? No.
no, I wish. No
No.
one wants to hear me play anything or sing anything.
Okay.
Do you?
But Florence and the Machine?
Florence and the Machine. Do you
Yeah.
play anything?
Oh, well, that's another conversation,
Okay.
another time. But
Okay.
I'm not coming to your dinner party, but and I couldn't top Florence, obviously. But this sounds like a super evening, and you're going to obviously set this somewhere where there's a beautiful sunset, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not sure where. Maybe we can look at some water also.
Yes,
Uh,
because you're a Pisces, right? You
mm,
told me earlier you were a Pisces, so you love the water. You love spending any time you can with the water.
yeah. Anytime. Like if I can see water, be close to water. I love it. I love swimming. Um, so yeah, so we'll be at sunset somewhere on water.
Would this be a lake?
Maybe a
Yeah,
mountain lake
I'm
or
thinking a
something. We can
mountain lake.
be
Yeah.
in the Sierras on the shore of a lake at sunset. I'm cooking, and it can be kind of a casual vibe.
I'm thinking this would incorporate all of your passions, the mountains and the water too, and great company and some inspirational company, obviously, from some of your mentors.
Hmm. Very much so.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
Um,
Well, I love that idea, and I've really enjoyed getting to know you, Mackenzie, and a little bit anyway, and share your story and the work that you're doing. And before you go, tell everybody how they can find you online on social media.
yeah, of course. I have a website, which is my name, so mackenziecalle.com, and also on Instagram. And my email is on my website as well. So feel free to email me and look at my work, or shoot me a message on Instagram. And
Wonderful.
yeah,
Well, thank you very much again for taking time to come on the podcast.
no, thank you so much, Chris. I'm so happy to have been here.
And of course, you can find us online at the Art Podcast on Instagram and also Call Time, because this episode will be on both the Art Podcast and Call Time, and on YouTube. If you're listening on your podcast app, you can obviously find us on any podcast app. But if you do get time to sit down at your computer or your iPhone, you can find us on YouTube, where you can watch the entire show. You can reach us, of course, by email at hollowellstudios@gmail.com. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for guests, we'd love to hear from you. So do take a moment, if you have an opportunity, and drop us an email. Any suggestions for guests? We're always open to that too. And I will be back in 2 weeks' time with another episode. So until then, thank you for listening.